Please let me know if you can hear me. Can you guys hear me now? All right. I think you all can hear me now. I think I had this new microphone thingy, uh, and something happened. But anywho, welcome back. Sorry about that. Thank you guys for letting me know that you could not hear me. Um, I am going to continue to push through. Every time I turn around, there's always an issue, but that's what happens when you are live. So thank you for entering back in. Come back in, come back in. Let's start this again. Tonight's episode is something that's very dear to me. It's very dear to me because it is about my own journey with losing my father and how that has impacted me, but also just my journey on losing a parent. When many people have maybe lost multiple parents, I have lost my dad, but so many people have lost both parents or parent figures. But this is a personal story to me because it is coming close to the 6 year mark that I lost my father in a motor vehicle accident on May 1st of 2020. And so I wanted to share, but I also wanted to talk with others who might have experienced similar things that I have experienced, and maybe walk away with some differences on how we can share a journey of walking through grief, because we know that grief hits everyone differently at all times. So please come on in. It's your girl, Dr. Tasha Rose. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I am the owner of Let's Talk About It Counseling Services in Bloomfield, Connecticut. I go by the name of your transparent sister in women's healing, and the goal is to really just help men and women heal. I have a lot of programming for women of trauma, but I also work with males as well and families. This particular network that I'm doing, this podcast, is for men and women, so it's not just for men. I mean, not just for women, it's for men as well. And so this is an opportunity for us to share our personal stories and how we kind of got through those things, and how we've become greater, or just really been able to like grow with wisdom and different things like that. So tonight I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my personal story of losing my father 6 years ago. Right. So before we start, please tell me your name, where you're checking in from, and I would love to hear from you. Subscribe. These conversations are needed, especially in the world that we are in today. So today is my 14th episode. I started this journey of podcasting on January 19th of this year. And so I'm very, very new, very, very green at this, but God gave me a vision, and I'm going to stick to it until he gives me all the tools that I need. And I'm going to continue to use my voice to help people heal and walk through their journey of healing. Okay. So drop your name, tell me where you're from, and let's get to it. So on Friday, May 1st, will mark 6 years since my father was taken from us in a car accident. This day has changed my life forever. Every time it comes close to, it's like my body automatically, my mind, my emotions automatically go into this shift of, oh, wow, like I feel off. I'm emotional. I'm a little quick with snapping at my loved ones, and sometimes I forget, and then I'm reminded. And so it's like it's mentally like embedded that this day is here. And so on May 12th of this year, we will finally get some justice for the death of my dad. The young woman who caused the accident will actually be being sentenced. She will get sentenced this this year. So it took 6 years, but I'm grateful. I think the biggest part for me is the fact that we have to kind of relive some of that day, with some of the things that took place. And I think that's going to be kind of a hard part. I will be speaking about how the loss of my father impacted me during her sentencing. Um, and through this conversation tonight, I'm gonna be talking about a lot of little things, forgiveness, understanding, anger, all that. But I think on May 12th, it's going to be very, very important for me to remember that my father would want me to be not strong, but understanding on both sides. And some people may not always agree with that when someone takes the life of another person or your loved one, because it's really easy to say, I'm going to be angry. I will never forgive that person. And I know my father. And I know my father was not a mean person. He was not someone that held grudges. He was always a helper. He always wanted things to be good for people. And so for me, this young woman, she was 22 years old when this happened. Now she's 28, I guess, or somewhere around there. Her life has changed forever. And, and this is not about, anything other than I have to also understand that my father would not want me to be walking around angry and resentful. Does it hurt? Of course it hurts. But um, I wanted to do this podcast today because there's so many people out here hurting. So many things are happening out here in this world. And I felt like I'm going to tell my story today because so many of us have lost our parents or a parent or a loved one. And I thought that this would be a great time to have this conversation, especially it is the anniversary of my father's 6 years that he's been gone. Thank you very much, Scarstruck. Thank you for joining in. Please subscribe. So I want to be transparent with you guys. I don't know if it's actually going to bring me true closure. I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to feel I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm going to actually be able to feel closure. I think that the closure sometimes can be a double-edged sword, right? But I'm not really looking for closure. I'm looking for, I would say, justice. I'm looking for justice. Yeah, I'm going to keep it that way, right? I have to now acknowledge again the pain that I feel, the anger, but also the capacity to forgive. I have to do all of this once again. Because 6 years ago, my father, he passed away during COVID. It was only 10 of us that could be at the service. And my father had 5 children, plus his brother, his uncle, the pastor, and that was it. And my mom, So it's like we totaled 9 people. And then, we weren't able to say bye to him. We weren't able to see him because it was COVID and only one person was able to go in, and that was my sister. She wanted to do that, and I could not. I wanted to remember my father the way I saw him when he left out of that house that afternoon. But anywho, I think about the fact that my dad was not gone for more than 15 minutes before this incident. He had just left the home and he was on his way to my uncle's house. And so to know that, this could happen at any time, anywhere. So, I'm always very, very honest about the fact that every time someone leaves my house, if I love you, if I care for you, I love you, be safe. That's what I say. Why? Because it's so important, because you never know when that's going to be the last time you see that person, right? So everyone heals differently. There's no right way to heal. There's no deadline, right? There's no deadline. There's no right way to heal. But there's got to be some type of process, right? Grief is not linear. It shows up in waves. It shows up in seasons and anniversaries such as this one, in songs and radio, smells, and fresh cut grass. Now, I look at all those things. That's for me. Like, I think of my father. My father was an avid like yard person. He loved to keep the yard manicured. He loved for the yard to just be in order. And my father would go outside after working all day, and he would just be in that yard for 2 to 3 hours. And I just remember that. And so for me, like, I have taken on some of that, right? So 6 years later, I have to learn how to live without my dad. But I won't pretend that it doesn't get hard, because it does, and it's okay. I want to normalize something for you guys, right? I want to normalize that grief does not expire. It does not expire. Don't allow anyone to make you feel like you got to get over it, that you got to be strong, that you have to, that things are going to get easier, because that's not always the case. Sometimes it takes time. And, I'm not saying that it's okay to be mean to people, but when you're grieving the loss of a loved one, it takes time. And it's okay to have grief linger. It's okay to have grief linger. It's okay to get into these moments where, you hear a song, or you have a scent that passes by, or you hear a voice, right? Or, you just think of the anniversary of a loved one, and then you automatically lose it. It's okay to do that. It's okay to do that, because you're healing. And just because you're grieving and healing doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. So remember that as well. Um, what's something someone said to you in grief that actually hurt you more than helped you? So, like, I think about that, because as a therapist, I have to pay attention to how I respond to people, or how I talk with people who come to me when they're grieving, right? So I would like to know, like, do you guys remember something that someone said to you during your time of grief, right? And how did that make you feel? Did it make you feel better? Did it make you feel worse? Did it make you angry? Did it make you guilty? What did it feel like? What was it? Because we all have done it at some point, even me. I have said things during someone grieving time or someone's loss that might have angered someone. I remember my girlfriend told me that one of the things that angered her about me was that I would send her scripture. And during the loss of her son, and she was not in a space, she was angry with God. And, I had no idea that I was impacting her in that way. For me, when I lost my father, I don't think I really remember anyone saying something to me that made me angry, or, that was like insensitive. I don't remember anything, but maybe you guys have, maybe someone has said something to you. Someone told me I'm not the first to lose my dad and won't be the last. Oh, wow. Yeah, that could be very, very hurtful. I think sometimes people think that they're saying something to kind of like make you stronger, right? Or they're saying something to be like an ally for you. And it's like, no, like, I just lost my parent. Like, right now, sometimes I just need you to be quiet. Sometimes I just need you to sit there, right? And I think sometimes we get so caught up in wanting or thinking that we're helping, but sometimes we're not helping. We're saying things that eventually can push that person away for good if you don't pay attention to what comes out of your mouth when someone loses a loved one. So thank you so much. Is it Rossi for giving that comment? I appreciate it. And I'm sorry that you lost your father, and whatever year that was, I know that you still grieve, and be okay with grieving. You have every right to grieve, and when it comes up, just know that you have every right to grieve your dad. um when I lost my dad, that 6 years ago, like I just remember the phone call. Me and my brother, we were talking, my oldest brother today, we were talking, and he was writing his impact letter. And I remember him saying something that never even, like, I didn't even think about. Now I'm talking, and it's like, someone did say something insensitive to me. And I'm like, wow. So my brother and I were talking, and he had mentioned that he just remembered the phone call that we had received from the surgeon. The surgeon says, they have all the surgeons, we're all together, we're all on the phone, like, speaker. And the surgeon, this one surgeon, I don't know his name, I wish I did, I don't know his name, but he just came on, he was like, your father is going to die. And like, when my brother reminded me today of that, it just did something to me, because that was like the most insensitive thing that someone could have said to someone who just found out that their loved one was never going to be home again. And how they said it, and that was very, very hard. And so I thank my brother for even reminding me. And I think I suppressed that because it was so hurtful, right? And I'm grateful that now I can look at that and just see, like, we have to do better. We have to do better when we're dealing with people in loss. And I think that doctors and people in the healthcare need to learn some sensitivity around loss, sensitivity around grief. Because to tell a family something like that, the way that that man said that, ooh, it stuck with me. And I do believe I had to suppress it in order for me not to fall into a depression. So, oh, thank you, Jesus. I'm so happy that I was able to remember that. That was a very insensitive thing that surgeon said to me. And Rossi says we just lost in November. They also say he was 85. I appreciate that he lived a long life, but I never imagined life without him. Amen. Yes, this is true, and this is very new for you too, Rossi. So please give yourself time, give yourself space, honor your time alone, honor your time of grief. Don't put yourself in a position where you feel like you got to keep moving, 85 or not. You had a long, long time with your dad, and that's a lot of memories. My dad passed away at 71. He was going to be 72 in June. And so he was 71 years old. So we lost him, and he would have been 78 this year. And so, I'm really grateful that we had the time. I had 39 years with him. So I'm very grateful for those 39 years, and they were wonderful. So you can't bring a person back, but you have the memories, you have the love, and I'm so grateful that my father was around for the 71 years that he was, and I gained so much wisdom and knowledge from my father. We did a lot of we talked a lot about politics and just life, and he taught me so much. So thank you for sharing. I'm not here to really give you guys a lot of clinical stuff. Like, this is really just a special segment tonight because I wanted to be able to be vulnerable about my own grief. But I also wanted to be open enough to help someone else that may be dealing with something like losing their parent. And I felt like it was a good opportunity to speak about it. So I'm going to share what works for me. And maybe something here will resonate with you too. So, one of the things that I do is I acknowledge my emotions. I don't push them down. I used to push them down like the first year. I think for the first year of the loss of my father, I really believed, I told myself he was in North Carolina. Because my dad used to always say he was going to retire and go to North Carolina. And so I used to always, I just like held on to like my dad is in North Carolina, right? So again, I don't push them down. I don't perform strength. I do not act like I'm strong. I think sometimes people think that I'm strong just because I don't go around falling apart all the time. But I do fall apart. I may not fall apart in person, but sometimes I do fall apart. But I do lean on God a lot. When grief shows up, I name it. So if I will tell you in a minute, like I'm sad, I'm angry, like I miss my father, whatever it is, I call it. So that's one of the things that I do. What emotions do you guys do when you struggle? What emotions do you struggle most to acknowledge? So tell me, what is something that you might struggle with when you're dealing with your grief and loss of your parent or your loved one, right? Because although this is about losing a parent, it could be about anyone that's very close to you that you're still struggling with naming how you feel. Some people deal with grief and it's more of guilt, right? They may struggle with the guilt of the loss of that person. Maybe they didn't think they spent enough time or told that person they loved them enough, or whatever the situation is. Sometimes we have these emotions that we struggle to name. I cry when I need to. Tears are not weakness. They are release. I tell my clients that all the time. Like sometimes we just have to cry. We just have to get the feeling, the emotion out, and tears are cleansing. So I cry, and it's not a sense of weakness. It's a sense of just releasing. I cry about a lot of stuff, but it's not to make anyone feel bad for me. It's literally about me releasing the emotion, rather it's anger, rather it's hurt, rather it's doubt, whatever it is, I'm gonna cry. I give myself full permission to cry, and I encourage you to do the same. Don't ever let someone tell you that crying is weak. Especially for our men and boys. Even when you're not dealing with grief and loss, a man can cry, and it's okay for you all to cry. And for those who don't think it's okay or it's something wrong with them, then I am so sorry that someone made you feel that way, because we have tears for a reason. When we cry, we feel better. If you ever notice, like when you have a deep or hard cry, you get tired, because that's helping you to release some of that emotion so you can relax and start over again. I speak to my therapist and people that I trust. Yes, I do have a therapist. I have a therapist that I meet with every month and multiple times a month if I need to. I am intentional about what I share, and I'm also intentional about what I keep within my heart, right? If I didn't have a therapist and I wasn't able to express what I need to express, then I'm holding on to all this stuff inside my heart, and that's not always great. So do you have a safe space or someone that you go to when you're grieving, that you can go and talk to, that you can share ideas and different things with? And it's a yes or no. It's no judgment. You don't have to tell me who. You could just say yes or no in the chat. I pray daily for strength. My faith is a foundation for me. Although, I think I was angry, but I didn't feel like God was punishing me. I didn't. I didn't feel like, it was God's fault that my father was taken. It was just hard because I was like, I just saw this man this morning. and to know that I would never see him walk through that door, I was a little bit angry with God, I will say. But I never questioned him. I just was a little angry that he took him so fast and didn't allow us to at least say goodbye. So that was for me. So every morning I ask God to give me strength to carry what I cannot put down. And I also ask him to show up, because sometimes we get so stuck in our emotions that we want to try to show up for ourselves, and sometimes we can't show up for ourselves. And when I say show up for ourselves, we are trying to get through this grief process by ourselves, and sometimes that's the worst thing that you can do, because you cannot get through this by yourself. You need somebody, you need something. If you are a believer, like, you're gonna have to believe in some type of faith-based practice, some higher being, right? Me, I'm God, I'm Jesus. Like, I'm believing that God and Jesus is going to help me, because I couldn't do it by myself. And to this day, I still can't do it by myself. I'm constantly in a space where when I think of my father and it gets overbearing, I just have to call out to God. I was just telling my friend last night, like, I have had a really rough of April. I have been so emotional, and I feel like I kind of put it in the back of my mind why I was this emotional. But then it was just like, dang, like, Tasha, you're struggling and you're not praying as much as you need to. And I had to realize, like, that was something that I was slacking on. Even though, I say I was praying, and I do pray, I wasn't being intentional about what I was praying. I lean into nature. So basically, like I told you guys before, my father loved his yard. So when I'm finding myself to be very, very down, I will go and do yard work. Rather it's in the winter, spring, or fall, or summer, I am going to work in that yard in some capacity when I start to miss my dad, because that is what he loved, he enjoyed. So when I picture him in that yard and picking up, like, pulling up the weeds and manicuring the lawn and putting down seed and lime and all of that stuff, like, that gives me joy. And I get so excited and I feel so close to him when I get out there and I do those things. So my question to you guys is, what is your healing space? What are some of the things that you do to remember your loved one, to feel close to your loved one, right? Sometimes I even find myself watching CNN. My dad was an avid CNN watcher, and he would sit there and eat popcorn and talk junk to the TV. And I don't do all of that, but I find myself sometimes sitting and watching CNN because I'm like, oh, I feel close. I feel close to my father. And it just makes me excited to know that he may not be here in the physical, but he will always be here with me in my heart. So, thank you, Kamari, for your response. I hope you guys subscribe. Tell me where you guys are from. Again, I'm super excited that you all, are on tonight. And then I want to talk a little bit about forgiveness. A lot of people don't like to talk about forgiveness, and I'm all about forgiveness. I'm all about forgiveness because I know my dad would want me to forgive this young lady, and regardless of what and why, she is still God's child, and I have to forgive her. And yes, it's hard. It might be challenging to know that she is the reason, or part of the reason, why my dad is not here. But I still have to forgive her. And a lot of people don't like to forgive people when they lose someone out of negligence. It's one thing if someone passes away due to, like, old age or some type of illness. But even so, it's like the forgiveness might be forgiving God. The forgiveness might be forgiving your mother or the caregiver for feeling like they didn't do enough, right? Or your father for not doing or catching something, or you might even have to forgive the person for dying, right? Because sometimes people will get upset because a person is so tired. They're sick. They've been sick for years, and they are upset that the person didn't want to fight more. But you got to forgive them. So just like those things, I have to forgive this young woman, right? I am still on my forgiveness journey, y'all, and I'm not going to rush it or fake it. There are times where I'm like, I got to forgive her, but I don't want to. There's times where I'm like, I got to forgive her, but why? So no matter what, I know I have to forgive her. And each day I'm working towards that. Each day I'm working towards that. And it's getting easier. The reason why it's getting easier is because, again, like I said, I've been praying, right? I haven't been praying as much, but I have been praying. So that's been something that's been helping me. And I'm sticking to it, because without forgiveness, you become sick. And whatever you're dealing with, if you have unforgiveness in your heart, you will become sick. Rather it's stress, diabetes, high blood pressure, anxiety, depression. That is what I'm calling out sickness. Because if you have a lot of unforgiveness in your heart, you will walk around with these issues going on within your life. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened is okay. It's not okay that she was the cause of my father's demise. That is not why I'm forgiving her. I'm forgiving her because that means I'm choosing to release the hold that she has on me. Because if I don't forgive her, I'm holding, like, she's literally going to be in my thoughts and my mind all the time. And my goal is not to have other people in my mind or pushing my behavior and my emotion. I want to be healing. I want to be healed. I want to be happy. I want to be at peace. And that doesn't mean that my father will ever be here again. But I want to be right. I want to be in a space where I'm not snapping at people, that I'm not getting triggered by every little thing, right? I want to be in a space of calm. So I want to ask you guys some questions. How do you forgive someone who never apologized? Today, I have not heard this young lady apologize. I have not heard her apologize in all the time she's been in the court. But God tells me I have to still forgive her. How do you guys forgive someone who has not apologized? And that is on any level, right? So we lose people who might have done something to us, right? And although we're hurting, our mother and father might have left our lives, but maybe there's something that you feel like they could have apologized, or you was waiting for them to apologize and they never apologized. How do you forgive them? They're no longer here. What do you do? Right? That's a question. How do you forgive? Another one would be, what do you do when grief hits you out of nowhere? What happens? Like, there has been times where I'm driving down the street. I remember last year I was driving to my office. I had just did the ice cream thing with my girlfriend, and I was driving back to my office for a client, and it hit me out of nowhere. I had to pull over and I had to cancel my client. I was a hot mess. And I had to stop, and I had to breathe, and I had to pray, and I was like, God, help me. But it hit me out of nowhere that I lost my dad. Like, it just was like it was very, 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 very bad. Very, very bad. And I had to sit there for a moment, and I had to be okay with myself. I had to, like, talk to myself and explain to myself that it is okay. And it's okay that you have to pivot and you cannot finish the day. It was okay for me to cancel. It was okay for me to be transparent with my client and explain to them why I had to cancel last minute. And so we have to sometimes put ourselves first, even when we have moments where grief overwhelms us out of nowhere. And I had to go and I had to talk to my family. How do you support someone else who is grieving? How did you guys do it? I know for me, it was just me and my family. We spent a lot of time together. We talked a little bit about what was going on with daddy, and we laughed about his jokes. We laughed about how hard he was. We laughed about so much stuff. I agree, Michelle. Just showing up with someone, for someone when they're in the midst of their grieving process, um, and letting people know that, like, I'm here if you need me, right? That's kind of like that show up. But I just remember, for us, we just kind of got together and we would just chat and eat and just be together. Like, my father was a family man. We stayed outside. Like, he always had some type of cookout, some type of party. Like, he loved his grandchildren, his great grands, and it impacted us so horribly, right, that he was not here. But we decided that we were going to show up for each other in a way that he would want us to, and that would be being there for each other. Is it normal to feel angry at the person who died? I just spoke about this. Yes, it is very normal to feel angry with the person that passed away. I think I was a little angry in the beginning with my dad because I was like, why were you out? Why did you leave the house? Like, my father was one of those men. He had to be gone. He had to go somewhere. I'm like, why did you have to go? Where were you going? And I just even remember that conversation. I was on the phone with my friend, and I was like, girl, I said, my father's always going. He always got to go somewhere. And then, like, within like 10 minutes, I got a bet, I heard my nephew banging on the door, and it was just like, so yeah, I was a little angry with my dad. I really was a little angry with him. But then God had to remind me that he's in charge. And I had to remind myself that this was no mistake. And as hard as it is, I had to forgive my father. But I definitely was angry with him for a little bit. Maybe a couple of weeks I was a little upset with him. How do you know when you need a therapist versus just time? Well, because I am a therapist, I always tell people, give yourself some time. Sometime it's like a month. That's your time. And then, really try to start talking to somebody. Because when you think about it, most people, when they lose their loved one, their parent, they have a lot of company for like that first month. A lot of people are checking in and trying to be there. But it's like after that second month that comes, a third month, now it's a year, people aren't showing up. People aren't being around. And sometimes we get into our head and we start to feel like we're lonely, or we start to feel like we don't have anyone. And sometimes it could be that. Sometimes it could be just that. Or sometimes it could be people don't know what to say to you. They don't know how to comfort you. So if you are giving yourself at least 30 days to kind of like be in the moment, like after, like try to reach out to someone that you feel that might be a good therapist to help you through your grief, and I would also say that give grief counseling some time. You're not going to feel good the first, second, maybe third time. You still might have a lot of anger, resentment. You might have a lot of just like sadness going on, emotional ups and downs. But don't give up on yourself just because you're not feeling like it's working after the first month of therapy. This is a time where I tell people, give your therapist some time, because that therapist is not only trying to learn who you are, that therapist also has to now be very mindful of how they work with you because you're so fragile coming into the space. So don't just jump up and leave or not participate or feel like this person isn't good just because the first couple of weeks it's been kind of quiet. Because sometimes that therapist is allowing you to process without anything being said. And so sometimes it's just sitting in a space, and if you need to speak, they're there to help you through it. So just be careful with that. Be mindful of that. But is there any questions, like you guys have any questions right now that you might want to ask? Because I want to make sure that although this was a special segment, I still want to make sure that I've helped someone. You know, that's my goal for all of these things. You know, I want people to be able to feel comfortable with speaking about things that have disrupted their lives, and I want I want you guys to be able to share how you have learned, but also how you have grown. So if you are walking through grief right now, whether it's fresh or old, I want you to know that you are not alone. Your pain is valid. The process is valid. And healing is still possible for you. Don't rush yourself, y'all. Don't rush trying to show people you okay. I know people who have lost parents 10, 20 years ago and they're still struggling. It's okay. You know, it might be opportunity to find a therapist if it's been that long. But doesn't mean that you're not going to still have some issues, right? But it's okay. My father's legacy will live on in me, on how my work ethic, how I show up for myself and how I show up for others, my community, because he was definitely a community person. And every person that comes into my life that chooses healing, my father's legacy will show up in that. How will you allow your parents' legacy to show up in you? So I would like to say before I go to like this video, subscribe, share, comment, do something that shows me that this was interesting or helpful. I'm just in a good space to say that my father instilled in me stability, emotional stability. He instilled in me a work ethic that I would say is supreme. He always told me to go for what I wanted, and always pushed me to do better. And although he's unable to see me in the physical doing all this great work, it's because of him that I'm here. And so I will continue to live on with his legacy, or his legacy, through my daughters, you know, my nieces, nephews. Hopefully throughout the years, one day I'll have some grandchildren. But I really miss my dad. I miss him a lot every single day, y'all. I miss him every single day. And so I know that you guys, whoever you lost, whether it's your mom or your dad or both of your parents, I know you miss them. I know it's not easy. I know you struggle at times. But just know that if you had parents to give you a foundation, you're going to be okay. And if you didn't have all of that stuff, that foundational thing, you still had life from those people who birthed you, who gave you life, right? And I'm just like so excited about the fact that I had 39 years with my dad, right? And I'm not saying that he was always there, but he was there every time I needed him. He was there. You know, we all have our stories. We all have our ups and downs with our parents, but they were our parents. Even if you were adopted or even if you were in foster care, you know, your parent is your parent. So when you lose them, you kind of lose a piece of yourself. But remember, the foundation is already set because you're here. So you have to continue to live and to thrive because you know that they would want you to do that. So Kamari says, understanding that grief is a forever journey. This was very insightful. Thank you. Thank you, Kamari, for attending, for joining in. I appreciate it. All right, guys. So I am going to leave you guys tonight. I'm so sorry about the beginning of this podcast and the hearing. I'm still gonna get it together. I know I am. And I'm so excited for all who have joined. I ask that you come back next Monday. And remember, it's your girl, Dr. Tasha Rose, your transparent sister in women's healing. And remember, I love you and God loves you too. Peace.